Hello, everyone, and welcome to Project Insight's Agile webinar. Today's topic is Test First, Then Code for Play to Quality. So just a few things to note before we get started. All participants will be on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please feel free to type them into the questions box, which you can find on your GoToWebinar dashboard. All of our PM and Agile webinars are valid for one PDU free of charge. However, you must be in attendance for the full session. PDU certificates will be sent out by the end of the day, so please hold off on emailing us about your certificate until then. And for those of you interested in the recording and slides, they'll be sent via email by tomorrow. You can also find them within our Project Insight community. My name is Alexa, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm on the marketing team here at Project Insight, and if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at alexa.ortega-mendoza@projectinsight.com. And for those of you not familiar with us, Project Insight has been dedicated to developing and providing web-based software to help teams work better together for over 15 years. We'd also like to share that PI was named the Best Project Management Solution at this year's SIA Cody Awards for continuing to innovate the project management industry. And from our enterprise platform that delivers optimal performance for centralizing projects, to our latest platform, PI Team, our free social project management software, PI has your team covered. You can request your free demo or sign up for PI Team at the URLs listed on the slide. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about our products, please feel free to contact us via phone or email. So we'd like to give a warm welcome to our host today, Dr. Dave Cornelius. Dr. Dave is a value delivery leader at Biorad Laboratories. He influences cross-functional teams to deliver amazing quality products to delight customers. And Dr. Dave is the founder of the 5 Saturdays program that empowers high school students through agility and innovation by providing learning experiences in technology and lean business. He's the author of the book, Transforming Your Leadership Character, The Lean Thinking and Agility Way, and innovator of the game Agility Leadership. Dr. Dave produces a podcast on iTunes and Google Play titled KnolShare with Dr. Dave and can be found hosted on grokshare.com. So with that, let's go ahead and turn this over to Dr. Dave. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Alexa. Let's see. I'm on a new platform today, so normally I'm on my Mac, so I got it. Show my screen. Got it. Am I presenting your presentation or am I presenting my own?
Are you presenting your own? I can drive if you need me to.
I could bring one up, but I didn't know. Yeah, today's one of those fun days that that we're having fun. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me just get into presentation mode. Sorry about that. I could pump through to where we need to be. Well, we may have a guest today, and her name is Tess Guevara. She's a software and quality engineer and an Agile practitioner, and she believes quality matters. So good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you are. I hope you guys are having an awesome day today. So we're going to talk about test first, then code. And when we think about test first, then code, the reason that I came up with this idea is really to help teams understand, what are they being asked to do before writing any code, so that they could have a context, clarity, and some level of constraints and that knowledge, because oftentimes they may not have that information available to them. So before I even go forward, I want to tell you guys that I just recently released a book. It's called Elastic Minds, What Are You Thinking? And it's available at Amazon.com, and we'll bring this up again later on. And 30% of all of that proceeds would go to the hurricane victims in the U.S. Virgin Islands and the Caribbean. So I just wanted to let you guys know that Elastic Minds, What Are You Thinking? By Dave Cornelius is available at Amazon.com. Let's just go through what we're going to cover today in our topics. So we'll ask the question of what is quality, who owns quality. We talk about test first, then code, and this concept called testing Mele. So these last two principles are things that I've been experimenting with, working with teams to ensure that we build a much better quality software products for our customers. So we want to make sure that you walk out of here, that you at the end of this presentation that you understand quality is important. How you could use a test first, then code practice, and how you could leverage testing Mele as a practice. So we asked the question, what is quality? And what is quality all about? And when we think about it, it's just really how do we build in this high level of loyalty with our customers and make sure that they hang around, because if we build crappy software, no one is going to want to buy it. We think that in terms of being able to have long-term revenue and profitability, just imagine if Google search didn't search correctly. I mean, they wouldn't make much money, and you probably wouldn't hang around and use their products. We look at how oftentimes it impacts the reputation of organization. Even you think of things like security breaches is a form of quality. We just had that with one of our credit bureaus, and someone got fired because of it. So I mean, the way people look at that organization is going to be different, and it improves safety. It's nothing like someone having access to all of your private information that you don't want them to have, like where you live. And oftentimes it's the recall factor of having to replace faulty products, right? Because you have to send it out, get that stuff back in, and it's a big process, and it takes a lot of people to get that done. And one of the things that we think about is how do we drive costs down, right? Because great quality means that you could sell things at a premium and also reduce your internal costs as well. So who owns quality? Who are the people who are really the owners of quality? Well, I think everyone is responsible for quality. When you look at the entire value stream of an organization, from the time there was an ideation to where you build it and you verify it and then validate it and send it out to the customers, everyone in that value stream is an owner of quality in some way, shape, or form. So I look at it, sales, marketing, everyone, I mean, and customer service, they are involved with gathering customer feedback so we can understand what's going on. With the change agents within your organization, as we're working through continual improvements of how we make things better, they're owners of quality. You may have a quality management system itself where you have certain owners and actions, just making sure that your system works as intended. And so when you think of it in terms of quality as a whole, we're looking at it as a complex system, and you have many people who have to commit to this complex system to ensure that quality is built in. So I said, to build high quality software, you need all brains on deck. And it's not just limited to the few, it's everyone who's involved in that value stream of building that product. And sometimes even those who are not involved with building and supporting, is also responsible for quality. So I'll walk you through the concept of test first, then code, and what's involved with that. And so the reason that I came up with this context of building test first, then code is really simply, I was looking at some of my software teams, and they were struggling with understanding, what's being asked of them to be built. And I said, well, we need to do some level of analysis. And so I said, do you understand the context? Do you understand the who, what, and why? And oftentimes, sometimes that's not well written, and sometimes it's not well received. So we have to understand, do you have any level of clarity around the acceptance criteria that's been stated for you? I want you to build me a cup that's 2 inches high, and I didn't tell you how wide it is. So and I never said who will use it. We need that level of information as part of defining the level of work that needs to be done. What are the constraints? Are there any dependencies, risk, or missing information? And the thing is that once you gather those steps 1, 2, and 3, then you could say, look, let me write a test that fails what is being asked of me, especially around the acceptance criteria, or a series of tests. Then the next thing is let me write a series of tests that pass what's being asked of me. And the last thing is that you close by acknowledging agreement. So you run this as a team. And they know in several of my webinars I speak about the concept of a micro teams, 3 to 5 people working together. So you do this as a team, and you could really walk through this in about 15 minutes, a very short time box per user story. So one of the great things that this helps with is you start having this great conversation about how to build code, how to write software, how to really produce an outcome. And it's open communication, it's judgment-free, it's the 3 to 5 people sitting down figuring out how do we solve a problem effectively. We want to look at, how efficient can we make the software? How efficient can we make that code and make sure that it works well? And when you think about it, I said it's a 15-minute time box, and that's the conversation flow. We don't want to spend a lot of time. And if in the context of Agile, when you think of a user story, and if you guys have been around listening to my dialogue for the last 9 months, a user story is really a short, well-defined description of work to be done. So 15-minute time box per user story that you could actually go through and understand context. You have clarity, you understand the constraints, you develop some tests to fail, what's being asked of you, you develop some tests to pass, and then as a team you agree, we think this is enough to start. This helps you to just work at a great sustainable pace. And with 15-minute time box, you can say we're going to set up 1 hour as a boundary, a time boundary, and said, so within the 1 hour, I could get through at least 4 user story, which is really amazing. You may think about what kind of architectural constraints or design that we have to apply to get this done. Now, this is a lot of steps, and you could go back and read this later, but in order to do this, we said we need to ask powerful questions as you work as a team. You make sure that it's a micro team, 3 to 5 people. We talked about using a time box of 15 minutes per user story, where it's nice and small and short. We want to make sure that anyone could participate in the process. So we talk about using natural language, which is how we speak. We capture that and we write things in that context. We want to understand and discuss who, what, why. As this specific customer by name, I want something very specific so that I may achieve some value. So I can know who, what, and why as part of the user story that's defined for that requirement. The acceptance criteria, and we'll go into some details about that. We want to make sure we understand risks, dependencies. Are there any missing information in the process so that everyone is crystal clear enough to get started? We write these tests to fail the user story in natural language. You do the same thing. We create tests to pass the user story in the natural language, and then we close with agreement. So let's start with our first question. And we said, quality is important because a company's reputation is influenced. Is that true or false? Quality is huge. Quality is a very important aspect of any business. And as our participants are going through, engaged in their poll to answer that question, we understand that quality is really, really important. It helps us to make sure that we're not putting out crappy stuff and impacting our company's reputation in the long run. So I hope you guys have been paying attention and you're giving us
they
great
have.
Let's see what they have to say.
So it says 100% answered true.
Awesome. This is really great because I can't see what your answers are today, but this is great that you guys that are really producing that. Okay. All right. So let's move along. So what are the things that you need? Basic tools to do test first, then code. Really simple. You have a small room or big room if you need that. And so you need wall space and a large white paper. This is typical Agile stuff. Nothing fancy about it. You need some sticky notes. That's all you need. Some markers. and I say painter's tape, some kind of blue tape that you could use to keep things on the wall if need be. That's it. And you need all brains on deck. So large white paper, sticky notes, marker, painter's tape, and all brains on deck. So here's the thing. Let's understand context. What user story or spike or defect, is what is it for? I mean, what do they want? And why is it important? Right? So it's always like, who is this for? What do they want and why is it important? So start with the story. And we've talked about this before, but we'll share it again. As a type of user, which is the value receiver, I want some value, the what, outcome desired, so that I may achieve outcomes. Why? The value defined. And so here's an example of what a user story looks like. So like I said, as a Wells Fargo card holder who is a value receiver, I want to use my card to pay for groceries, what, outcome desired, so that I may have dinner, the value defined. This is a very important thing to be able to purchase groceries. So in a short, concise 3 lines, I could understand who wants, what do they want, and why they want it. So context is really simple when it's defined this way. So I could go about talking about, well, Mary, who is a card holder who lives in Waukesha, Wisconsin, was able to use her Wells Fargo card to pay for groceries so that she could have dinner with her family. That's really important as a developers, you could start to have a conversation that is more humane and start talking about people. Now, clarity, we talk about the acceptance criteria, right? So let's dig into that and see, is there clarity for their acceptance criteria? Do we understand what does it take to satisfy what is being asked of us in the user story? So let's look at an example of acceptance criteria, because this is what success looks like. This is why this is really important. We said we're going to use this thing called behavior-driven development, or BDD, behavior-driven development. And so it starts out with a givens. Given my bank account has funds, and I made no withdrawals recently, when I attempt to purchase less than my balance, then the purchase should complete without error, right? So we should be able to go in there and say, hey, here I'm using my card. I have enough money and I could, purchase groceries. Well, that seems to make a lot of sense when we're having a dialogue in natural language, right? Because we know the constraint itself that we're looking at is the amount of funds that you have within your account. But if I write an acceptance criteria in this context, now I could look at the user story and really understand what does success look like, right? I mean, so because the other flip side of this is that if you don't have enough funds, then the system should also tell you that you don't have enough to purchase the amount of groceries, or you may only have a smaller amount that you could purchase, a smaller amount of groceries. So there would be a lot more involved in the acceptance criteria, but on a high level, this gives you a great context to follow. Identifying constraints. We want to know, are there any known or unknown constraints that are imposed by the system, or you need to impose on the system? So when you think about constraints, we're talking about boundaries that we have to work within, right? And this also helps us to minimize risk, in the process. So as we look at this, we say, here it is, here's one of the constraints that we have to care about. Hey, there's funds in their bank account, all right, that's one thing. To make sure that the purchase that I have is less than my balance, that's another constraint that I have to be aware of. And we have to make sure that it is completed without error, because you may run into another type of error where perhaps the card isn't working well, and the system has to be able to report that back. And so in a very short, concise way, you could see that we understand the who, what, why, right? So we have total clarity in what's going on. We understand, what are the clarity and the context. Now we understand constraints. What does that mean for us? And how do we move forward with that? Um, Now, one of the other parts that we think about is how do we build in this, how do we build in the acceptance criteria behavior? Um, so one thing, Alexa, I'm just going to interrupt for a quick second.
Sure.
I think what's her name is asking for the link to join the conference.
Oh, Tessa
Um,
or Tess? Yeah.
Tess, yeah, yeah. I'll just let her know that you will be sending it.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I hope you guys could be patient. We're trying to get our guest in here today. Um, Other thing is, so field acceptance criteria behavior. And so the one of the fourth step is to define tests to fail each criteria, because one of the things that we said the card balance is not enough for purchases is one of the failed tests that we could create, right? And so we could test to see right off the fact that here's a scenario that we could test to see if there is funds or not, or if we're within our balance, and we could create a failed test to support that right off the bat. I don't have to write any code. I don't have to worry about compiling it. I don't have to make sure that I have a great integrated system, because I'm in a room with 3 to 5 of my team members, and we're testing and validating what's been asked of us in a very short period of time, 15 minutes. So we could simply go down and really identify, like, hey, what are all the things that we have to verify to ensure that the card balance is not enough for purchases. So we could look at funds, my balance, and errors really quickly. We could identify those things. We said, okay, we write those and we keep those for the future. The next thing is that fifth step is that we pass the acceptance criteria behavior. We understand that the card balance is enough for purchases. So the same thing. We still look about funds, balance, and error. This is just simply writing out a simple test, and it doesn't have to be rather complex. It could be, we want it in natural language, because if, for example, we wanted to invite one of our executives to one of these sessions, they should be able to sit in and participate. So this is the power of the tool, is that anyone could participate, because everyone owns quality. Now, as we talk, just to summarize, just test first, then code, right? So we understand the context, we understand, the acceptance criteria and its clarity. We look to identify any kind of constraints. We fail the acceptance criteria behavior, and we pass it. This is really important that we understand this practice, because, like I said before, we want to bring as many people into the quality realm that we can. And if you're doing this with software and you're using some cryptic language, then it's hard to do. Now, if I'm using natural language, then I could bring anyone in the organization, and we could start to have a dialogue around quality. That means you have many more contributors to your quality system. So let's go with this group interaction. So, which of the following is not part of test first, then code? Is it A, understand context, B, obtain clarity, C, identify constraints, D, write passing and failing tests, or E, test everything? Which one do you think is not part of test first, then code? Let's see here if anyone.
So about 88% said test everything.
88% said test everything,
Yes.
which is awesome, isn't it? That
Yeah.
means they were paying attention, because that is exactly correct. That's exactly the correct answer. So let's just keep moving along. So now we're going to pivot and start talking about, since now we talked about test first, then code, we're on a very, what I would say, micro level. We're testing user stories to make sure that they do work. And these are just small snippets of our requirements that we're walking through. And it's more of a time box of about 1 to 2 hours. We try to keep it nice and short and sweet so we can be focused. And you could get really about 4 or so user stories done in an hour, right? Because if you max out your inner time box of 15 minutes, 4 times 15 gives you 60 minutes. So you get 4 user stories that you can perform that level of analysis and get that done. So I came up with another concept called testing Mele. And Mele itself, what it speaks to is really a Hawaiian song or chant, kind of commemorating some significant event. Everyone test. We wanted to make sure that in this process that we have teams where they're maximizing value and they're minimizing waste to achieve the highest quality. And that's what testing Mele is about. I mean, we just recently did one, and it was amazing to look at a cross-functional team that not only included developers who built the software, but other developers who were integrating with the system, who are validating and testing the system. It did include people from training and people from customer support and people from our IT team who are all involved with evaluating the systems. We bring in as many people, different contexts, so we could understand, how things work. So when we think of testing Mele, we think about how do we harmonize quality, right? And so as we're trying to build this trusted solution, right? I mean, so we have all of these different components that go into this. We could look at it from a user experience perspective. We could look at it from a business functional test perspective. We look at it from a load and stress test. We look at it from a SOAP test. And look at it from a performance test. So as we look at the system in its entirety, how does it really work end to end, and what are the potential impediments that we may encounter? I mean, this is one way to do it, and let me just walk you through this reality. When you think about who participates, there's a lot of people who could participate in the testing Mele activity, right? So we could have new and experienced users. We use the software development product teams. We have customer support. We have trainers who are involved. We have IT and support teams. We have product owners. We have scrum masters. We have product marketing. And whoever else that you think could, poke at this system, test this system to make sure that it's of a high quality. Now, this is not, a long-running test. So when you think about it, when we go through this is normally, a half a day worth of effort, depending on the size of the system. The max it would be a full day. I mean, we're talking about 6 hours, right? I mean, half a day would be about 3 hours, or we're looking at a 6-hour time frame of how do we really validate and kick the tires of our system to ensure that they're of high quality. So how do we go through and we execute testing Mele? So the first thing you want to do is explain the purpose of the testing Mele session. Well, we're here today to evaluate that this new app that we're running on our iPhone system actually works to provide these certain level of features, right? And what the reason that you're here is to make sure that these features work, and maybe you could come up with other scenarios that where it doesn't work that we haven't tested. Really simple explaining what's going on for that testing Mele session. Sometimes you may need to provide some type of a flyer or a brochure. It's really explaining how the system works, because many of the users may not see your system before, which is really good. You need that. You want fresh eyes on it. If you have, like you said, you have a series of features, you could assign very specific features for people to work on. And that's really important, because now we're beginning to break the work down into smaller units that can be quickly evaluated, and people are not overwhelmed by the whole entire system. So now, if they have a handout, which could be more also like a training guide that they could follow, then they could walk through a training guide and really validate a very specific feature within the system. We may ask others who are a bit more experienced and said, hey, can you explore Some of you guys, you explore, click this way. Use these. You try different combination of keys to see how the system works or if it breaks. We have to have a way of tracking defects, because one of the things that comes out of testing Mele is often a lot of defects, things that are totally unexpected. But I would rather catch all of these type of defects in-house first before they go out the door, because it's cheaper for me to fix it in-house than for me to send it out and have customers create complaints, and then you start that whole system of trying to mitigate risk based on defects or low quality. So this is a great way of how you could track defects. Like I said, we always want to close with a 60 to 90-minute retrospective. And really, it's just to help to understand people's experience going through the testing Mele, things that they learn about the system, things that they learn about the process, which is really important. So what happens is that you're going to have outcomes that you have to pay attention to. So you're going to have lots of defects, and so you have to think about working as a team, because you will need a team to execute testing Mele. And you want to start to prioritize what are, things that are priority 1 and 2 defects, things that are totally cause your system to fail and create a serious amount of calls for your customer support group. So we want to prioritize and get those done first. We always provide a tool. So sometimes we use, Google Docs or SharePoint or some tool like that, where you could set up a single document that's structured in a certain way that people could start to catalog some of the defects that they've encountered, some of their experiences, even some of the good experiences. You want to capture that. We have to, as if whoever is facilitating, or you may have several facilitators, their participation in this process is to really also observe what's going on with the people who are actually playing with the system, right? So we could start to capture some of their reactions to the system. The final step is to really get involved with a retrospective. Make sure that we could retrospect and understand what's going on with our system. Where are their failure points? Are things going really well? And so at the end of the testing Mele, we set up a retrospective where we start asking what went well, what didn't go well, what do we want to improve. This is also executed by an experienced Agile coach who helps to facilitate this process. You could probably even use someone who's not as experienced as well, but you would have a much better outcome in terms of the flow if you have an experienced Agile coach or facilitator to help walk you through the retrospective experience. What comes out of a retrospecting often is really the learning experience of your participants. You may find that people would say, well, we couldn't find the link to go log our defects, or this was really complicated and we didn't understand how to get this done. And so that creates a lot of heartache for a lot of the participants. I mean, it's just some of these logistical things that may cause their experience to not be as well as you would want them to. We keep a time box as usual for retrospectives. We'll keep those to 60 to 90 minutes because, people's time is really important as well. And also, you just don't want people to be bored to death. So it's really important that they get involved and deal with, the constraint of 60 to 90 minutes time boxes. So here's an example. I said what went well, what did not go well, and what do we need to improve. But another context that you could look at is what did we learn? And you could see, just giving you an example, so you could say, as a developer, my software missed key customer gestures and actions. So this developer who was part of the testing Mele is looking at this from the context of a user experience. He goes, wow, I didn't even think about that. And even for the product owner, I mean, that's something for them to take note of. The user experience designer and facilitator may also take note of that. So these things are very important because these are actually corrections that could go back into our system and make it better. And the second column you may have is what questions did I have? Someone may say, hey, can we have an easier way to navigate to sales information? Right? And that's completely valid, right? It's a different way of looking at our retrospective, so what went well, it's not always, all the goodness of the system. Sometimes it's learning. Learning is important so that we could continually improve. And sometimes it's good to hear, as a column, what are we thankful for? Why is this important? This is really important to be thankful for, the systems that we have and for the people who are building these systems, because it's either A, generates revenue, or B, help us to really maintain cost, right? Or help us to accelerate work that we're doing. So as you can see, it's just a simple example for a retrospective. What was learned, what questions do we have, and what is thankful. And you could use this for just about anything. It doesn't have to be for software. I mean, I sometimes use this when I'm sitting down going through an experience, and I want to just reflect and understand, what has taken place and what experiences did I have. So here's group interaction number 3. Testing Mele harmonizes quality. Is that A, true, or B, false? Does it really harmonize quality?
So I think everybody is in agreement here when they say true. 100% answered true.
Awesome. I wonder, did Tess ever make it on?
Yeah,
Yes,
she's here.
Hey, Tess! Awesome. I didn't know you were there.
The link, I don't know why I couldn't get in.
That's all right. Let's just stay focused. So it's great because we do have time. So I guess all of the questions are left to the end. So here's the summary of what happens when we're trying to build a quality solution. Look, this really helps to improve customer satisfaction. Right? People are happy when they have great products that works, products and services. The people who are building it, I mean, morale is increased if people are not slamming them, saying, "Oh, your system sucks. It doesn't work." Most of you, if you've been involved with building product software, you've heard this before. And hearing the good news is really awesome. We believe that test first, then code builds understanding. TC builds understanding by the team members who are involved with making sure that we have a quality outcome for our customers and the organization. Testing Mele really encourages quality ownership for all. It's important that we use this practice in a way that it brings in multiple disciplines for testing. And normally people have unit tests, functional tests, this test, but what if we did them all together, all at once, at the end of a build cycle? It would truly make a huge difference in terms of building confidence that we have really done our due diligence. So when I said any questions, I am going to jump over and Tess, I know I sent you these questions yesterday, and so we didn't get a chance. So guess what? For the next few minutes, I'm just going to ask you questions. How's that?
That's okay.
So let's just start with the first one. And matter of fact, Tess, I'm glad. I know you're at a conference right now and you took some time out of your busy schedule to join us. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So let's start with question number 1. So let's share at least one incident in your experience when poor quality negatively affected a project.
Okay, the poor quality affected my project in a sense that we are in Agile, and in Agile there's 2-week Agile, and so in other words, your estimation on any task within the project is very important. And there's this one one task that we thought it's real easy. We didn't even look at, what are the possibilities that could negatively impact or positive about it. We just said, oh, that's so easy. It takes about only one day to do that. When we actually sat down and look at how to code it and what impacts, we found out it's big. It's big, a lot bigger than what we thought it is. And it's not only one day, but it's probably a possibility of 4 days. We could have broken it down into smaller stories. So in other words, we almost not meet our dead. At the end of 2 weeks, we almost didn't finish it. So it's really important to do tests first and look at whatever task you're doing and understand the constraints and everything before you actually, because you could really miss a deadline.
Yeah, so what was some of the benefits of test first then code that you experienced?
The benefits is that you are already aware of the constraints and the challenges and what's there available for you to take advantage of and what's not there, and then you can communicate it ahead of time and understand what dependencies and talk to other, where your project have dependencies on, and you can really scope it better if you do tests first.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great concept. And you didn't have to write any code, right?
No, not at this time. It's just basic understanding the constraints and the context of what you're doing and getting the feel of it to ensure that you can really do it within the time that you promised to do it.
So let's talk about steps 4 and 5, which is to fail and pass the test, right? Which is kind of those 2 steps are similar to test-driven development, right? And we're not doing any coding because with test-driven development you have to code. In this context, we're not doing any coding. So how did this really improve unit and functional testing from your experience?
See, the test first is really good to do it during grooming time, where you're given a chance to really examine what the task is all about, what your project is all about. But with test-driven, this is when you're actually almost doing like a unit test, that you're writing the negative passing and the failing of the test. So you know what happens when it passes and what happens when it fails, that you didn't meet the requirements and all that stuff. It really helps both improve the unit test and the functional test, because it gives you the idea of what's going to happen and how to approach it. Although functional test is a bigger scope than the test first or the TDD.
Right. So do you think that in some of these dialogues, I mean, if you brought in others, as part of your test first then code, 15-minute time box, do you think that they could participate and help and give you other insights as well?
Yes, definitely. Everybody's input is very important, because especially if whoever's going to participate really knows the project. So things that you couldn't think of at that time will help you think about it now.
Awesome. So you've been involved with Testing Mele, one of our Testing Mele sessions. How do you think, or give some examples in your perspective of how Testing Mele could help a cross-functional team achieve high quality deliverables?
Oh, in the beginning, I didn't think that Test Mele is a big thing, but then once we experienced it and I saw people are really interested in participating and knowing what's there, I realized that it's really good in building up quality, because everybody gives their input on, oh, this text box should be here, because after we do this is the first thing we do. It gives you an idea that, oh, okay, this wasn't part of the original design, but it's good to know because it makes sense in the flow of workflow. It's also nice because other people who are not using your software but gets affected by the software can give their input. So it's a big quick feedback, which is the most important thing in providing quality to your work.
So when you think about, the last question is really, give a few reasons why a team should use test first then code and Testing Mele. I mean, why do you see people should use this?
Oh, this is very important. This is something that I don't think you should ignore, because if you care about quality, it's important to test first. Then you know what's going to happen, because there are situations that you thought and then you realize when you're actually sitting down and actually doing that you don't really know. And there are things that if you don't do tests first or testing, if you don't do tests first, then you go, is this always acting this way when it should not? You don't know. So it's good to do tests first, because that will give you a lot more confidence that what you did didn't really break anything, and really, fulfill what you need to fulfill. And testing Mele also is another thing that provides qualities that that a lot of people tested it, a lot of people gave their impact on it, and that it works once you put it in production.
Oh, wow, that is really powerful stuff, right? That at least we have someone who has done this before, could give some really good, powerful feedback on that. I was kind of missing something. I'm going to jump around here and try and find this out on Google
If you
Drive.
want, Dr. Deep, I could go ahead and I have your slide up for the book as well.
You do? Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
find it in the one that I
No
have.
worries.
So
Yeah,
go
I'll
ahead
take
and
back presenter rights.
thank you. Yeah. Okay, good. So let's see. I don't think I have a ways to control this anymore. So
It's fine. I can drive.
okay, you go ahead and drive. So just check us out on KnolShare.org. We'll have a few questions, some time to ask a few questions. We blog out at KnolShare.org. This is our organization that deals with leadership and agility and helping you to get prepared to really be successful with your endeavors. Let's move on to the next slide. Right, so I was talking to you guys about my latest book, which is called Elastic Minds. What are you thinking? I think it's important that you guys buy this book. The reason is that we're going to give away 30% of all revenues for the next 6 to 9 months, and all of that money will go to the U.S. Virgin Islands and people living in Antigua and Barbuda. If you don't know that, Barbuda is, for the first time in over 300 years, no one lives there because of the hurricane, because the island was completely devastated. So I see we have about 116 people. I would love 116 people to go out and purchase the book either as a Kindle or print. And the Kindle version of it is $9.99. So, if you guys could spare 2 cups of Starbucks coffee or your favorite drink, perhaps you would purchase the book so that we could contribute to the victims of the recent set of hurricanes that we had. And you would actually get a lot out of this because it speaks to innovation and how do we think about innovation and the different techniques we use for doing that. Let's move forward. We're doing the same thing with our learning cards. Those 30% we're giving away, so you could go to agilityleadership.com and make an order there. We use those cards a lot for facilitating learning, for different type of interactions with people. They're great topics and discussions in there that you could use them for many different reasons. Keep moving. We do have a 5 Saturdays program where we do educational outreach, and we help students, really learn about agility and technology and lean business. So, if you want to donate to this good cause, go to the number 5saturdays.org, and you could donate there. And time or money all works. Keep going. We get out to grokshare.com, where we have podcasts out there of different industry experts that we could, share back with anyone. One more slide, I believe. And again, get out to KnolShare.org and reach out to us. But I think we still have a few minutes after sharing that. I want you to buy my book and the learning card so we can help others to have a few questions. Maybe we could get maybe 1 or 2 in. Sorry for taking up all of the time, but maybe we could get 1 or 2 questions in. And the real thing is, if you post questions, I still respond to them and put them up on KnolShare.org, so that you can get your answers there. So let's just start with questions, Alexa.
So we're still waiting. Maybe we might want to give it a couple more minutes if we get any questions in.
Okay, so then you could, I think that's the last slide that I have, but you could start with your outro,
Okay.
I guess.
Cool. Thank you, Dr. Dave and Tess, for joining us today. And so again, Dr. Dave's Elastic Minds book is available on Amazon.com. We'll go ahead and send out a direct link to purchase with our recording tomorrow. So just a quick note about PDUs. You'll automatically receive your PDU certificate via email. And for any further questions, go ahead and contact me at my email there. You will earn 1 PDU for this session. And to register your PDU, go to pmi.org and log in as a member of PMI, and then go ahead and input all the information that you see up on the slide. And for those of you on social media, we'd like to invite you to follow, like, and subscribe to our social media channels. Our handle on Twitter is @Project Insight, and you can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest in PI and project management news. And in our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next webinar by visiting our webinar calendar. And so that's all we have for you today. We'd like to thank Dr. Dave and Tess for a great session, and of course, thank our audience for your time, as usual. And we hope to have you on board for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Well, you can't leave yet. Do they have any questions?
Yes. So we do have a question that says, how do you break down the user stories for the test first then code?
Well, how do you break it down? I mean, obviously, when you get let's say you get a story that's too big, right? And after you go through the test first then code analysis, you go like, geez, this is going to take us, because we have a boundary that we established for stories. We said there should be anywhere between 1 to 3 days in size, right? Because we're doing relative estimating. And so if that's the case and you look at it and you said, you know, this is too big. This is, 10 days. So then you look at it and you said, we could break stories based on, I mean, one boundary you could say, like, we're going to look at it based on business functionality, right? Based on business functionality, we will break the story down into 3 smaller chunks, or maybe even 4 smaller chunks of, we said we want, if it's 10 days we think it's going to take, so maybe we have 4 stories as opposed to 1. And that could happen in that 15-minute discussion, right? Because basically you have all of the right people at the right time making those type of decisions. Tess, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I don't do test first on the big story. I always do it on the smaller story. So once on the smaller story, then I can gain understanding of what my constraints are and what I can do and stuff like that. And again, the way you break a big story, for example, you're building a shirt. You can start by saying, let's try doing one of the sleeves first. Is it the left sleeve? Is it the right sleeve? Or the collar first? That's how you break it. You don't just take one story and say, I'm breaking it this, when it has to have, normally what I want is like a vertical slice of the story so that you understand the full context of where it's going.
Yeah, and that's quite valid, in terms of breaking it into slices based on business functionality. A left sleeve, right sleeve is a functionality that you need. So great response. Thank you for contributing that. What's the next question if we have one?
Yes, someone asked comprehensive, or let me see. I don't think that's a full question. Do you find that the test cases that come up within 15 minutes is comprehensive, or does a QA engineer need to circle back later and finish up adding test cases to ensure complete test coverage is obtained?
I'm going to let Tess answer that, because remember, we're dealing with micro teams, so we're not just dealing with just developers. We're dealing with developers, testers. You could even add more roles, as part of that 3 to 5 person team. So Tess, why don't you answer that?
Okay, the test first really is more like a component test, unit test deal. That means you're only answering what happens when you develop a functionality that they're requesting. The functionality is there or not there. But you definitely need there's a whole lot different kind of testing. There's functional, there's integration, there's smoke. There's a whole lot of testing, but all of them are still needed. the test first is just understanding that, what happens when you do this, what happens when you don't. If you don't ask those questions, then you may be missing something.
And that's true because, this is before you even, I know what this person is trying to ask is that, do we need to bring a QA engineer in to give you a more comprehensive view of the test cases that you need to execute? And the reality is that if we want that person to be part of this session, well, they are, because a test you are, and you provide a relevant context for analyzing the work that needs to be done up front.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So next.
That's all the questions that we have so far.
And that means we did a fabulous job in terms of, no, I'm just joking. Anyway, you know what? Look, thank you all for staying and spending this hour with us. This is the final Agile webinar for 2017. I look to come back next year and provide more of a context about Agile leadership. That will be the focus for 2018. So thank you all. Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Alexa, for all the support, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.